Hello and welcome to the Stanford session at Interview Prep event. My name is Akshay Singh and I'll be your host for today. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Debbie Choi from MBA Mission. We'll begin with a brief presentation followed by live Q&A. Please post your questions in the comment section and we will answer them for you.
Thank you, Akshay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the session. Big shout out to for his in the past, and it's always a pleasure working with the team. So I'm going to dive right into it. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see? Okay, guys. So what we're going to cover today is the GSB interview. How for it? How do you make sure that you know what to expect in terms of the format? And then I also want to leave you with an action plan for how to prepare. So let's dive into it. A little bit about myself. I'm a GSB grad. I started my career at JP Morgan, actually, and over the years, I've also been in management consulting and post MBA. I was in healthcare, product management, and I've had 13 years of admissions coaching. And I'm really privileged to be one of GMAT Club's most highly rated admissions consultants, and I've guided hundreds of clients over the last 13 years. Conducted hundreds of mock GSB interviews and had hundreds of successes. So I'm really proud to be, having worked with so many clients over the years and helped them get into the GSB. So what we're going to start with today is we're going to talk about the GSB interview logistics. And then we're going to go into the format of the interview. We'll talk about what questions they have and how you can prepare. So in terms of the GSB interview logistics, just taking a quick step back, it is super competitive, as you guys well know already. For the class of 2027, GSB had over 7,000 applicants, and only about 1,000 applicants were invited to interview. And out of those, about 450 applicants or so were ultimately admitted. So super competitive. It's a real, privilege and honor and milestone to even get an interview. And even if you get an interview, it doesn't mean that you're a shoo-in. So the numbers are pretty tough. But in terms of the interview release windows, for round one, it goes from anywhere from mid-September to mid-November. So it's almost a 2-month window. For round two, which we're right in the middle of, it goes from mid-January to mid-March. And then round three, mid-April to mid-May. And there's no bearing on your candidacy when you get your interview. I've had clients who, in some years, they get a call the day before Thanksgiving, and they get their interview. So it doesn't mean that when you get your interview first, it doesn't mean they like you more. When you get your interview closer to the end of the window, it doesn't mean that they like you less. The window, is as long as you get your interview, that's what matters. And you usually have 2 weeks to complete your interview. And if you're traveling for work or, any extenuating circumstances come up, you can email the admissions committee and let them know to request more time. So that's in terms of just kind of overall logistics, just taking a step back. So what is the format of the interview? What does that look like? So first of all, what they try to do is they try to match you with an alum in your area and or field of interest or current industry. So that alum would have a little bit of background in common with you. Of course, they train all their alums, but alums being alums, there may be some wild card interviewers or questions. So that's good or bad, depending on what that interviewer is. But usually, most from what I've heard from my clients, interviewers are well trained. They're pretty consistent in terms of the type of questions that they're going to ask you. Now, in terms of what that means for you, if you have an alumni interviewer, of course, depending on how recently they graduated, they may or may not know what is specifically happening on campus or specific school policy. And we'll get to that section later on. But in terms of the questions that you prepare for your interviewer, you may want to focus a little bit more on their experience on campus. There may be times when you have an admissions committee officer who is interviewing you, and that has been known to happen as well, specifically for some MSX interviews. Okay, so in terms of what the interviewer has, what information they have on you, typically the GSB interview is a blind interview. There's no knowledge of your application. They have not read your essays. They have not looked at your application. They typically only have your resume. And it can be anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes. The interviewer, depending on their style, may come in with a list of questions that they want to get through. Other interviewers may be more conversational. And typically what makes the GSB interview different from other interviews is you could deep dive into one or more specific experiences. So there may be, you may talk about one big project that you're working on with a lot of follow-up targeted questions. This is even though it's a blind, what we call a blind format, meaning the interviewer only has your resume, but they could really deep dive into, specific projects. So it makes it a little bit different from some of the other schools that we have seen with a blind format. So what sort of questions are they going to ask? Let's take a look at that. Now, usually you will start off with a lot of they'll start off with open-ended questions. And there are some very high probability questions that I would really encourage people to prepare for, such as walk me through your resume, what are your goals, why GSB, why MBA, and then probably a lot of behavioral type questions. Tell me about a time when you did this or when you did that. So I would say the first three are the very high probability questions that you should certainly prepare for. So let's walk through how you might think about preparing for these high probability questions in a more structured way. So the first one, walk me through your resume. They might also ask, tell me about yourself. And typically that's a nice open-ended type of question that they might start with. And whether they ask you, walk me through your resume or tell me about yourself, you can use a similar structured answer. So for example, you could use the structure of how your resume is structured. And usually there is a professional section in your resume, and then there might be a personal section that includes education, where you went to school, and then extracurriculars as well. So you could structure your walk me through your resume answer in that way, in which the scaffolding, right, the structure that you give the interviewer at the very beginning is to say, well, if you look at the top half of my resume and the bottom half, there are, the top half is professional. And so let me talk through some of the professional highlights, and then I'll talk about personal. So that's a very useful structure that you can use for an open-ended question like that. Even if they ask you, tell me about yourself, you could definitely talk about your professional, and then outside of work, what are your interests and what do you do? It's also very helpful if you have, a theme or a connector that kind of flows through your personal and professional experiences. For example, on the example here, it talks about, okay, there are two driving forces behind what I do, both professional and personal. And, a curiosity and a passion for creating results that I can personally touch and feel. So that allows the interviewer to look big picture and understand your narrative and what you're truly passionate about. So those are just ideas for you in terms of how you want to structure that opening, introductory question. And this is a question that, whether it's for a GSB or for other schools, is very high probability that they often start with this question. So I recommend, definitely practicing that. I might aim for, anywhere around 2 to 4 minutes as you practice and you're timing yourself. You're wondering, how long does this need to be? Do I need to go through every transition, every job change that I've had? And the answer is no, because, obviously they have your resume, they can see what job changes you've had and so on. But really try to share the thinking behind the themes, why what really motivates you, and focus on the highlights, right? So instead of saying, well, I, left JP Morgan and I went to consulting, because focus on, as you can see, I can, I have finance and consulting experience, but really the highlight of my work there was this project that I worked on. So that really kind of draws the interviewer's attention to some of your achievements that you want to highlight. So that's a structure that I would recommend, kind of thinking through for this walk me through your resume question, which is a really tough question, and unfortunate that it always happens at the beginning. Okay, so another high probability question is, what are your goals? What are your career goals? And that is another question that you will definitely want to practice. Again, the idea is to be thoughtful in terms of drawing upon your experiences to explain how you got to your goals, and also be very specific and clear as to what your goals are. What is the problem that you want to solve? And don't be afraid to use your Stanford SAB. Why Stanford? Right? You spend a lot of time crafting that career goals and why Stanford answer, that essay. So you want to be consistent with what you wrote in the essays. The interviewer has not read your SAB, so they're not going to say, well, they're not going to grill you on it necessarily, but they want to, at the end of the day, after the interviewer submits their notes, everything gets added to your file, and the admissions committee is going to look at your application holistically, and they want to see consistency. So what you wrote in your essay and what the interviewer notes are in regards to how you answered what your goals are, they should be consistent. So that's something to keep in mind for your career goals. And of course, you want to also make sure that you are clear on why GSB, why MBA, because these are pretty standard questions. They want to see that you are excited about their program. You want to have 2 or 3 thoughtful reasons as to why you are interested in the program, how it will fit into your career goals. Don't be afraid to have, again, details from your SAB, specific classes that you're interested in that will help you achieve your career goals, and, even professors that you're excited to learn from. Okay. Now we'll get to the meat of the GSB interview, which is that they might start off with asking you, well, tell me about a time when you showed initiative. Tell me about a time when you did this. That's the beginning of probably diving deeper into one or two stories and them asking a lot of follow-up questions. But usually it starts by them asking you, tell me about a time when you led a team. Tell me about a time when you worked together or showed conflict or showed initiative, I should say. And one structure that you could use to answer that type of question is the STAR method. The STAR method stands for situation for S, T for task, and A for action, and then R for results. So situation, you start by explaining what was the context, what was the situation that you for this story. And then T is what were you tasked with doing, right? What did you have to do? A would be action. So what did you end up doing to overcome any challenges and so on? And then R would be results. So that would be a pretty standard behavioral type question that you can, the structure you can use to tell any story, really. It's not, it's a structure to help you. It's definitely, you're not being tested on, how strictly you adhere to the structure. The more you practice, the more you're going to get used to talking about the sequence of, the story and what you did there. Okay. So towards the end, you will also have a few questions. So you want to prepare a few questions for the interviewer going into the interview. Of course, it depends on the type of interviewer, whether you get an alumni, which is very highly for the GSB, or an admissions committee. Now, of course, we talked about at the beginning that if you have an alumni who has maybe graduated the GSB a while ago, they may not really be privy to any recent policies or classes that you might be interested in. So you might want to think about asking them about their experiences. The idea is not to stump them. You want to have the interviewer be able to answer those questions and feel good coming out of the interview. If you get an admissions officer, you might be able to ask questions closer to the work that they do or the policies and so on the school that could affect you. And of course, the idea is to ask questions that are connected to you, connected to your career goals or your what you want to do when you get to the GSB, and not just a philosophical or a hypothetical question, right? So you want to always ground the question you ask in your personal profile and what your goals are at the GSB. Okay, so those are the major type of questions, the high probability questions that you should prepare for. So let's get down into, I want to leave you with an action plan. So how do you actually prepare? So what is the GSB interviewer, what are they focused on? What are they looking for in the interview? There are a few things that they are going to be paying attention to. First is, of course, they want to make sure that you are who you say you are in the GSB application. And sometimes, we have, applicants who sound incredibly polished in the essays, and they spend a lot of time working on their essays, so of course that's very natural. But then during the interview, they may not sound like how they portray themselves in the essays. So that is a little bit of a discrepancy there. So you want to make sure that your essays sound like how you would present yourself, how you would speak. And of course, you want to know your application very well. And we will get to some of those concrete steps that you can do in terms of the action plan in a few minutes. But that's the first thing that they're looking for, that consistency. Are you who you say you are in your GSB application? The second thing they're looking for is, are you excited about the program? Now, the GSB has over 7,000 applicants, and there are a lot of people who might, submit an application just because it's Stanford. And why not? right? So they want to know that you really have done your research into the program and that you know what your goals are and you're getting yourself into, and how can the program actually help you. So that's something that they care about. They want to hear specifics about, and they want to see that you've done your due diligence about the program and they're truly excited about it. Then next, they want to know, how do you think? How do you lead? They want to know more about you, and your thought process. And that's where we'll get a little bit into more the how do you prepare for the behavioral type interviews, the questions, where you are sharing your thinking. How do you overcome challenges? How do you motivate people, influence people? And they want to get a better sense of that without the word limit of 650 words. And then the last thing is, are you likable? Do you play well in the sandbox with others? One of the things that I noticed right away my first day at a GSB about my classmates were two things. One, how incredibly smart everyone is. And two, how down to earth, how nice they are. So that's something that the GSB maybe unconsciously or consciously, filters for is, people who are genuinely open-minded, humble, eager to learn from other people, from their classmates, from professors, and so on, and really self-aware and self-reflective about what their strengths and weaknesses are. So the fourth one is hard to kind of put on paper, but they really want to see, especially for the alumni interviewer, if I run into you at a future alumni event, am I going to have a pleasant conversation with you? I'm going to have an interesting conversation with you. Am I going to enjoy having a cocktail with you? The first thing you want to do is, of course, do your homework. Know your story very well. Reread your essays, your resume. Think about what are the top, 2 or 3 things that you want the interviewer to remember about you. And then dive into the details of looking at each bullet point on your resume and thinking through, refresh your memory. What were the details behind each bullet point? So each bullet point in your resume should hopefully represent an achievement, a project, a deal, a transaction, right? Refresh your memory. What happened for each bullet point, right? And practice talking out loud, telling the story out loud, using that STAR format that we just talked about, right? Situation, what was the task or the challenge? What was the action? What did you do? And what were the results? So if you can tell the story behind each bullet point on your resume, you're going, you're almost there in terms of the foundation of your preparation. The second thing you want to do is know the school very well. Know the GSB. Check out his blogs, any recent school press releases. You could Google your interviewer to get a sense of their background and their career trajectory, so that you know a little bit about, how that conversation might go. You might say, okay, my interviewer is a banker, so I don't want to badmouth my banking experience, right? So, those are all background information that can help you in your interview. And then, of course, practice. Don't memorize your answers. Don't write it out, because once you write things out and you start to memorize, that can sound very canned. You want to, just be able to, off the cuff, be able to, let me tell you about this project, right? If you need bullet points, if you need flashcards, that's totally fine. But the worst thing you can do is to write out in full sentences and start to memorize it. I would not recommend that. Practice using a friend, use, us, MBA Mission, use the mirror, right? Time yourself, time yourself in case the interview runs short. 30 minutes can go really fast. It would be nice if it runs long, but, you never know, right? Okay, so one exercise that I like to have my clients do is to view your stories through different lenses. Could answer different questions. So people always kind of panic and worry because like, well, it's 30-minute interviews. Am I going to have, 20 stories to share? Well, usually, you again, keep in mind for a GSB interview, you're usually diving deep into a story. There might be a lot of follow-up questions about, okay, why did you make that decision? Why did you decide to do this or that, right? But the same story could answer different questions. For example, I have an example here. An applicant might spend 1 day a week tutoring inmates for the GED, right? So that question, that story could answer a question like, how have you taught those who are junior to you? Okay. It could also answer a question like, describe a role model. You might have a fellow tutor that works really well with inmates that you can talk about in terms of, okay, so that could be a role model in terms of, me learning how to work with inmates. Tell me about a time when you influenced others. Well, that could be a good example of the inmates are not reporting to you, right? But you're able to motivate them. You're able to influence them to, do their reading or do this, right? So these are all questions that you could use the same story for. So you're looking through that one story through different lenses, right? But of course, you only want to use one story one time per interview. And for example, if you get, tell me about time when you influence others, or what accomplishment are you most proud of, and why in the same interview you don't want to use the same story. So this an exercise that can kind of push people to kind of think about their stories a little bit differently, and make sure that they're not kind of getting stuck on, oh, do I have enough story? I need a new story for every question. And usually for a big achievement like this, you can look at it from different angles and use it to answer different questions. Okay. All right. So I want to, before I open it today, I want, and some of the things we've already talked about, just to recap. If you can walk out of here, the first thing to do is to reread your essays and your resume and practice telling each story behind each bullet point. You're going to get to 80% of the foundational preparation for a GSB interview. So that's the first thing. If nothing else, that's the one thing I recommend highly doing. Second thing is, of course, know the GSB. Know what programs and classes you're most interested in that will relate to your career, will help you get to your career goals. And then keep up to date on, any GSB blogs, any, recent events, or, any news coming out of GSB, any changes in the curriculum or programming or professors and things like that, right? So just, be up to speed on the latest from GSB. And then the third thing is to make sure you prepare some questions for your interviewer that relate to your career goals, how it affects you. So it's nice to ask the interviewer about their experiences and so on. But think about, you're not here to grill the interviewer, right? You're here to think about how their experience might inform or shape your experience at the GSB. So always kind of think about questions from that angle, don't stump the interviewer as well. Don't come up with questions that are too hard. Just think about some open-ended, easy questions that the interviewer can get into, the mode of telling you about their GSB experience, and walk out of the interview feeling good. Okay, so that's the action plan, guys. So hopefully you can at least get to the first item, if not all three. So I also want to end with some resources for you. On our website, we have plenty of free resources. You can download the GSB interview primer, the insider guide. Our GSB primer has sample interviews from previous years towards the end of the primer. So I would recommend just taking a look at what those sample questions are, and through how you might answer those questions. And then of course, if you need more help, we have interview packages that you can sign up for with any one of our teams. I'll let you read that, and then if you go onto a team page, you can get his experience, where we went to school, and so on. So we have a pretty diverse team with a lot of different backgrounds that could resonate with you. And I want to leave you with that as well. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A now.
Thank you so much, Debbie. That was
Okay.
very insightful. So let us start our Q&A. The first question is by Supriyo. She is asking, how should a candidate balance personal vulnerability with professional polish when discussing what matters most?
All right. Okay, so I do the first question here. In Stanford interviews, how should candidates balance personal vulnerability with professional polish when discussing what matters most? Now, good question. And I want to clarify that you likely not get asked about what matters most. Remember, the interview read your essay, and they're not going to ask you, what did you write in what matters most essay? I've never heard that question before in 13 years. So, and I would say don't worry too much about having to explain or justify or defend what you wrote in what matters most. Now, of course, you can certainly echo some of the themes. You can usually find as well. But again, you don't have to say, "Oh, I really care about this," like I wrote in my what matters most. That's you don't have to do that. You can treat this conversation as a fresh perspective, as a person that you just get to know, meeting for and your professional experiences. Most of the time, hopefully that kind of addresses your question about having to answer questions from what matters most. Okay, good question.
Thank you so
Next
much.
question.
Our next question is
Yeah.
that do these questions interview format also apply to deferred MBA programs?
Very much similar, as well as the MSX program as well for mid-level professionals. So everything that you've seen in this presentation, you can pretty much apply to the deferred and the MSX interview.
Got that. Thank you so much. And other interview officers same for all the three programs? Uh, we'll go to the next question. So, Supriyo is asking that for non-linear career paths, what resonates more with GSB? Clarity of direction, curiosity, or conviction?
Resonates more with GSB, clarity. That's a good question. And I think it relates to why you made certain changes through your career. And it may be different for everyone. So it might be that when you came right out of college, you wanted to explore a certain field, and then you started to develop curiosity could also be a reason for why and right answer, so to speak. There is no right answer when it comes to careers. And when you're, a few years out of your undergrad, it's very normal to be exploring different things and getting to know what your interests are, what your strengths and weaknesses are. I don't think what you think the GSB that self-reflective changes. I can tell you, for example, for me personally, I started off in finance. It was what a lot of my clients did, right? Working on Wall Street. So I did that, and as I started to get to know what I was interested in, I said, look, wanted to expand my lens to businesses and companies beyond just the finance lens. Why I'm to consulting, and that's a totally reasonable story. So I think as long as it really is what drives you, what makes sense to you, the answer.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for answering that. The next question is, what are some of the more unique questions you have heard come
Okay,
up?
that's a good question, and I don't think that they are out to stump you. I don't think that they're sitting there, thinking hear a question that you can't really answer because it's going to be related to everything we've done. So it might be a question. Okay, you built this model for this project. Tell me a little, how you model. It's for folks who maybe haven't, done enough prep work. They might be like, oh, how did I build that model? What was that model like? So you don't want to, and and in that situation in the interview, what you want to do is make sure you are well prepared and you're fully refreshed in terms of your memory, even projects from like maybe 3 years. You're going to end up diving deep into a more recent experience, a more recent project recently in the past year or so.
Thank you so much for answering that. We've already answered this MSX question, but I would want to add on and ask you that are the admission committee, interview committees same for MSX and MBA?
Uh, Hello, Akshay. Hi, Devi. This is Abhijit from GMAT Club team. Sorry to interject, but
Hi.
I guess internet connection is unstable. So, Devi, may I request you to join the StreamYard again? Just restart your internet connection and join the StreamYard again. Just your stream is not continuous, so we are really not able to understand what you are saying because the stream is not continuous. So, could you just join the StreamYard again?
Thank you so much, Abhijit. And while we wait for Debbie to log in again, I would want all the participants here to type down their
Unfortunately, and I can't.
Hi, Debbie. Can
So
you
did
hear
you
us
want
now?
me to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you could just rejoin, it would be better because I think there is not very much clarity.
I can hear you now. Did you want
Okay.
me to
Uh,
rejoin the StreamYard?
Abhijit, please let us know.
Yes, yeah, please log in again. I
Okay.
guess she is logging in. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and being so patient. I would want all of you to type down your questions. We will slowly take them down one by one. Also, please do like, share, and subscribe our channel. We have all the new essays and interview debriefs, which you can check on our relevant links. Yes, recording is going to be shared. Thank
Is
you,
this
Debbie, for
better?
definitely it's much better. So we'll go to our next question.
Perfect.
That was that while you've answered that MSX programs ask the same questions, but is the committee also same or they have a different committee for MSX?
Yeah, so usually they will try to find a different admissions officer who has not read your entire application. I have heard that sometimes they may not be able to do that, and the officer interviewing you has read your application. However, the format remains similar in that they will not be asking you about your what matters most essay. They will be, more getting to know you through, some of the other questions that we talked about, and also diving deeper into a project, for instance.
Thank you so much. We'll jump to our next question. Uh, what are the options for interview format? And can you describe each virtual, in person, or pre recorded?
Yeah. So there will be in person or Zoom. And there's not really for the GSB, not a pre recorded video question. For in person or Zoom, either way, you will be evaluated equally. So there's not a bias towards one or another. Use the method that works, but and you're not judged differently either way.
Thank you so much. We have around 2 minutes more, so we'll take one last question from the team. Uh, so the question is that what might an interview look like for an aspiring healthcare product manager?
That's a good question, and I'll kind of use my personal example. Definitely talked about wanting to go into healthcare. I had done a lot of healthcare projects as a consultant, so that was an area that I was personally personally interested in going into after business school. I was matched with a alumni who was also a management consultant. And so we ended up talking about the work that I have done consultant, healthcare and outside of healthcare. But we didn't spend too much time. She did, oh, it's not a job that you've actually done. They just want to hear that you have thought through what that career pathway for you is post MBA and why you needed an MBA. But they're not going to be grilling you on, what responsibilities or what duties that role might entail because you haven't done it yet. The focus is really going to be more on what you have done. Hopefully, that helps to alleviate some concerns. You just want to make sure that your career in your background and your interest.
Thank you so much, Debbie. That was very insightful. And thank you all for joining the Stanford session at Interview Prep. Uh, Definitely, I'm sure all of us have learned a lot from you. And we hope that we'll see you here again soon. Uh, to those who are watching, best of luck, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Please do remember to like, share, and subscribe this channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akshay.